Why do so many Thai people check an auspicious date before marriage or opening a business? A Thailand Through Eyes Sleep Story. Chapter 1. The calendar I thought controlled everything. Before I came to Thailand, I believed lucky dates were little more than superstition. As a journalist from Canada, I like facts, numbers, schedules, deadlines. If a restaurant opened on Monday, I assumed it was because the owner had finished renovations. If a couple married on Saturday, I assumed it was because friends and family were free. Simple, practical, logical. So when I first heard that many Thai people carefully checked auspicious dates before opening a shop, buying a house, moving into a new home, or getting married, I smiled politely. Inside, however, I thought, surely people don't really believe a date can change their future. That assumption followed me all the way to Thailand, and for several months, nothing challenged it, until one quiet evening in Chiang Mai. The rainy season had just begun. Soft clouds drifted above the old city walls. The air smelled of wet leaves and charcoal smoke. Motorcycles hummed gently along narrow streets. Lanterns glowed outside tiny cafes. Everything felt calm, unhurried. The kind of evening that seemed designed for slow conversations. I was renting a small room near a local market. Every morning, I walked the same route. Past a flower vendor, past a noodle stall, past a tiny shop that sold Buddhist amulets, past a wooden building that had been empty for weeks. Then one morning, something changed. Workers arrived. Painters appeared. Boxes filled the floor. A new coffee shop was preparing to open. As a journalist, curiosity followed me everywhere. Each day, I stopped briefly. The owner was a cheerful woman named Pim. She looked to be in her early 40s. Always smiling, always busy, always carrying something. One morning, I asked her when the grand opening would be. She laughed. "We are waiting." "For what?" I asked. "The date." I assumed construction wasn't finished. But the walls were painted. The tables were ready. The espresso machine was installed. Everything looked complete. "What date?" I asked. She smiled. "The lucky date." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. "We already know when we can open." "When?" "Next month." I looked around in confusion. "Next month? But everything is ready now." "Yes." "Then why wait?" She simply smiled. "Because that day is good." That answer left me more confused than before. A day is good? How? What makes Tuesday better than Thursday? Why would anyone delay opening a business that could already earn money? The question stayed in my mind for days. A week later, I met my Thai friend Niran. We sat beside the Ping River. Rain tapped softly against the wooden roof above us. Fishing boats drifted slowly across the water. I told him about Pim's coffee shop. He nodded. "Very normal." "Really?" "Very. You would delay opening your business for a date?" He laughed. "Maybe. Why?" Niran looked at the river for a moment. Then he asked a question. "When someone important visits your house, do you prepare?" "Of course." "When you start something important, do you think carefully?" "Of course." He smiled. Maybe auspicious dates are a little like that. I wasn't convinced. He noticed and laughed again. "You think it is magic." "A little. It is not exactly magic." "Then what is it?" But instead of answering, he simply said, "You need to see more." The rain grew heavier. Streetlights reflected across puddles. And although I didn't know it yet, that conversation had just begun a journey that would completely change how I understood one of Thailand's oldest traditions. Not because I suddenly believed dates controlled destiny, but because I was about to discover that the story behind auspicious dates was far deeper than I had ever imagined, and much more human. As the evening drifted quietly toward night, the city lights shimmered across the river. The sound of distant temple bells floated through the rain, and somewhere beyond the old walls of Chiang Mai, another family was probably opening a calendar, searching not merely for luck, but for a meaning, and I was only beginning to understand why. Chapter 2. The wedding date everyone waited for. A few weeks after my conversation with Niran, I received an invitation. Not a formal invitation printed on expensive paper. Not the kind delivered in a gold envelope. Just a simple message. My landlord's daughter was getting married. and somehow I had been invited. Her name was Dao. She was 28 years old and worked as a school teacher. Her fiancé, Win, managed a small family business. They had been together for several years. By every modern standard, they seemed ready. The venue had been booked. The food was arranged. The families approved. Everything was prepared. Yet, the wedding had been postponed once already. Not because of money. Not because of a family disagreement. Not because of logistics. The date had changed. Again, when I asked why, my landlord smiled as though the answer were obvious. We found a better day. A better day. There it was again. The same mysterious phrase. I remembered Pim delaying her coffee shop opening. Now a wedding was doing the same thing. As someone raised in a culture where weddings were scheduled around convenience, the idea fascinated me. A few evenings later, I sat outside with Dao's father. The air smelled of jasmine and damp soil. A gecko clicked somewhere near the roof. Children played in the lane beyond the house. I finally asked the question directly. Why is the date so important? The older man poured tea into small cups. For a moment, he watched the steam rise. Then he spoke softly. When you plant a tree, do you only think about today? No, you think about many years. Yes, a marriage is like that. I nodded. But surely the date itself cannot decide whether people stay together. He smiled. No, the people decide that. The answer surprised me. Then why choose the date carefully? He leaned back in his chair. Because it reminds everyone how important the promise is. The evening breeze moved gently through the garden. Somewhere nearby, a dog barked once and then fell silent. The old man continued. In Thailand, many families see marriage as more than two people. More than two people, two families, two futures, two histories. I listened carefully. Choosing the date is a way of saying we are entering something meaningful, not controlling fate, honoring a beginning. That was the first time I heard anyone explain it that way, and suddenly it sounded very different from the superstition I had imagined. The visit to the astrologer. A few days before the wedding, Niran offered to show me something. We rode through quiet streets lined with trees. The afternoon sky glowed pale blue after a morning rain. Eventually, we stopped at a modest house. Inside sat an elderly man. No crystal ball. No dramatic atmosphere. No mysterious music. Just books, calendars, documents, charts. The room looked more like an office than anything mystical. The man greeted us warmly. Niran introduced me. The astrologer laughed when he learned I was curious about auspicious dates. You think we predict the future? I hesitated. A little. He smiled. Most foreigners think that. The room filled with gentle laughter. Then he opened a large book. Its pages contained dates, lunar cycles, traditional calculations, and notes written by hand. I expected grand claims. Instead, he spoke calmly. Many people misunderstand. What do they misunderstand? I asked. He pointed to the calendar. An auspicious date is not a guarantee. Not a guarantee? No. He shook his head. If a person is lazy, a lucky date cannot help. I laughed. If a couple does not respect each other, a lucky wedding date cannot save them. That sounded surprisingly practical. The astrologer continued. A good date is more like a blessing. A blessing. Not a contract with destiny. Not a magical shortcut. A blessing. Something hopeful. Something symbolic. The distinction felt important. Outside, wind moved through bamboo leaves. The soft rustling sound drifted through the open window. The old man turned another page. For thousands of years, people have searched for moments that feel harmonious. Harmonious? Yes, like seasons for planting, or tides for fishing. He nodded. Exactly. I began to understand why so many Thai people felt comfortable with the tradition. It wasn't always about believing invisible forces controlled life. It was about beginning important chapters with intention, with mindfulness, with respect. The morning of the wedding. The wedding day arrived before sunrise. I woke to the distant sound of roosters. The sky remained dark blue. Mist floated above the fields outside the city. As I approached the family home, I immediately noticed something different. There was a feeling in the air. Not excitement exactly, not nervousness, something calmer, a sense of readiness. Monks had arrived early. Family members moved quietly between tables. Flowers decorated entrances and walkways. Golden marigolds glowed in the soft morning light. Incense drifted gently upward, the scent mixed with fresh fruit and cooked rice. Everything felt peaceful, deliberate. No one rushed, no one shouted, no one seemed stressed. The chosen time for part of the ceremony was still nearly an hour away, yet everyone waited patiently. Not because they feared something bad would happen if they started early, but because the moment itself mattered. I began noticing something I had missed before. The date wasn't only important because of tradition. It created a shared focus. Everyone understood this day was special. Everyone treated it differently. Everyone became more present. Perhaps that was part of its power. A conversation with Tao. Later that afternoon, after the main ceremonies had ended, I found Tao sitting quietly beneath a tree. The celebrations continued nearby. Children laughed. Guests chatted. Music drifted softly across the garden. She looked happy, peaceful. I sat beside her. "Can I ask something?" She smiled. "Of course. Did you really care about the date?" She thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yes." "Why?" I expected an answer about luck or destiny. Instead, she surprised me. When I look back many years from now, I want to remember that we began carefully. The words lingered in my mind. Began carefully. Not magically. Carefully? We spent months preparing, she continued. Our families came together. Our grandparents gave advice. Our parents helped organize everything. She looked toward her husband, who was speaking with relatives nearby. The date became part of the story. The story. That phrase stayed with me. Every culture creates rituals around beginnings. Some exchange rings. Some light candles. Some sign documents. Some gather family. Some choose special dates. Perhaps the forms are different, but the purpose often feels the same. To mark a moment, to say, this matters. Pay attention. Remember this day. What I had been missing. That evening, I walked home alone. The streets glowed beneath warm yellow lights. Motorcycles passed occasionally. Crickets sang from gardens hidden behind walls. The city felt sleepy, comfortable. I thought about everything I had seen. For months, I had viewed auspicious days through a narrow lens. I assumed people believed the calendar itself created success. But the people I met had described something much richer. Auspicious dates encouraged preparation, reflection, family involvement, respect for major life events. They transformed ordinary days into meaningful beginnings. And suddenly I realized something. Perhaps the real value wasn't whether the date changed the future. Perhaps the value was how the date changed the people entering that future. By slowing them down, by encouraging thoughtfulness, by reminding them not to rush important decisions. As temple bells echoed softly across the night air, I felt my assumptions beginning to shift. Yet there was still much I didn't understand. Because soon I would discover that weddings were only one part of the story. The deeper mystery lay in something even more surprising. Why successful business owners, practical, intelligent, modern entrepreneurs often cared about auspicious dates just as much as newly married couples. And that discovery would challenge my thinking even further. Chapter 3, The Coffee Shop That Refused to Open Early. Several weeks after Dao's wedding, the rainy season settled more deeply over Chiang Mai. The mornings arrived wrapped in mist. The mountains beyond the city often disappeared behind soft gray clouds. Rain drifted through the afternoons, not always heavy, sometimes just a gentle curtain of water that seemed to slow the entire world. I had begun to notice something about life in Thailand. People rarely seemed obsessed with speed. Important things happened. Businesses opened. Families grew. Projects moved forward. But there was often a patience beneath everything, a willingness to wait for the right moment. And nowhere was that more obvious than the little coffee shop owned by Pim. The same coffee shop that had puzzled me months earlier. The one that was completely ready. The one that could have opened immediately. The one that chose not to. At last, the auspicious day arrived, and I decided to be there. Before sunrise, I woke before dawn. The sky was still dark. The streets were quiet. Only a few food vendors were already preparing for the morning rush. The smell of grilled pork drifted through the cool air. A bicycle rolled silently down the road. Somewhere nearby, a monk's chanting floated softly through the darkness. As I approached Pim's shop, lights glowed warmly through the windows. People were already gathering, family members, friends, neighbors. Everyone seemed cheerful. No one appeared sleepy despite the early hour. Inside, fresh flowers decorated every table. Small arrangements of orchids stood near the entrance. Fruit baskets had been carefully prepared. Incense rested beside a simple altar. Everything looked beautiful, not expensive, not extravagant, simply thoughtful. Pim spotted me immediately. "You came. I wanted to see the lucky day." She laughed. "You still don't believe in it." "I'm trying to understand it." "Good answer." She handed me a cup of tea. The steam rose into the cool morning air. Outside, the first birds began singing. The city slowly awakened. A question every foreigner asks. As guests arrived, I found myself standing beside Pim's older brother. He had spent many years working in Bangkok before returning to Chiang Mai. He spoke excellent English. Naturally, I asked the question that had been sitting in my mind for months. If the shop was ready weeks ago, why wait? He smiled immediately. Apparently, he had heard this question many times. "Let me ask you something." I laughed. Everyone in Thailand answers questions with questions. He nodded proudly. "It works." Then he pointed toward the shop. "Do you think Pim delayed opening because she believes one day magically creates customers?" "Maybe." He shook his head. "No." "Then why?" He looked around at the gathering crowd. "Because beginnings matter." I had heard that idea before, at Dao's wedding, but now I was hearing it again. In business, think about this, he continued. How many times can you open your first shop? Only once. Exactly. The morning breeze moved gently through the doorway. People arranged chairs. Others prepared food. Children chased one another outside. The brother continued. If you only have one first day, why rush it? That simple question stayed with me. Why rush it? The blessing ceremony. As sunrise painted the sky pale gold, several monks arrived. Everyone greeted them respectfully. The atmosphere changed immediately. Not dramatically, not solemnly, just quieter, more focused. People lowered their voices. Conversations softened. The monks entered the shop. Chanting soon filled the room. The sound was gentle and rhythmic. Even though I couldn't understand every word, the effect was calming. The chant seemed to slow time itself. Outside, motorcycles passed. Birds sang. Life continued, yet inside the small coffee shop, everyone seemed completely present. I watched Pim closely. She wasn't thinking about profits. She wasn't checking sales forecasts. She wasn't calculating expenses. For those moments, she appeared entirely focused on gratitude. Gratitude for reaching this point. Gratitude for family. Gratitude for support. Gratitude for a new beginning. Later, when the ceremony ended, I asked Niran something. Is this about religion? He thought carefully. Sometimes, only sometimes, Thailand mixes many things together. What do you mean? He smiled. Buddhism, family traditions, local customs, astrology, respect for elders. All together, very often. That answer explained something I had struggled to understand. Many Westerners, including me, often look for one reason behind a tradition. But in Thailand, several reasons can exist side by side. A tradition can be practical, emotional, spiritual, cultural, and symbolic, all at the same time. The shop finally opens. At exactly the chosen time, Pim unlocked the front door. Everyone applauded. A few customers entered immediately. Some were friends. Others were curious neighbors. The atmosphere felt joyful, not because everyone expected instant success, but because a long journey had finally reached its beginning. I ordered the first cappuccino of the day. Pim laughed when she handed it to me. You are customer number 1. That feels important. Very lucky. There it is again. She smiled. Maybe. I sat near the window watching customers arrive. The rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds. The street glistened. Everything felt fresh, new, full of possibility. And then something unexpected happened. An elderly customer entered. After ordering coffee, he congratulated Pim. Then he asked a simple question. Did you get a good day? Pim nodded happily. The old man smiled. Very good. And that was it. No discussion about magical outcomes. No dramatic predictions. No guarantees. Just an acknowledgement that the beginning had been treated with care. What business owners really told me. Over the next several months, I began asking other Thai business owners about auspicious dates. Restaurant owners, shop owners, hotel operators, market vendors. I expected wildly different answers. Instead, I noticed a pattern. Again and again, people described similar ideas. One restaurant owner told me, "A good date makes me feel confident." A tailor explained, "It helps my family feel happy." A market vendor said, "It reminds me to start with a good attitude." A hotel manager laughed and said, "Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But why not begin positively?" None of these answers sounded irrational. In fact, many sounded remarkably practical. The date itself wasn't doing the work. The people were. But the chosen date created something valuable. Optimism, unity, confidence, purpose. And perhaps those things mattered more than I had realized. An afternoon with grandmother Sa. One afternoon, Niran introduced me to his grandmother. Everyone called her Grandma Sa. She lived in a wooden house surrounded by fruit trees. Mangoes hung from branches overhead. The scent of ripe guava filled the air. The house sat quietly beside a small rice field. Life seemed slower there. Gentler. We spent the afternoon drinking tea. Eventually, our conversation turned toward auspicious dates. Grandma Sa laughed when she heard my questions. "You think young people invented this?" "Not exactly. This existed before your grandparents were born." The afternoon sunlight filtered through bamboo walls. Shadows danced softly across the floor. She pointed toward the fields. For generations, Thai farmers watched nature. The weather, the moon, the seasons, the rivers, the soil. I listened carefully. People learned that timing matters. That made perfect sense. Farmers everywhere understand timing. Plant too early, problems. Plant too late, problems. Choose the right moment, better results. Grandma Sa continued. Eventually, timing became part of many areas of life. Not because nature controlled every outcome, but because people learned to respect the importance of beginnings. Suddenly, the tradition felt much older than I had imagined, much deeper. Not merely superstition, but a cultural memory passed from generation to generation, the discovery that changed everything. That evening, I walked home beneath a sky filled with stars. The rain clouds had finally disappeared. The air smelled clean, fresh, peaceful. As I passed temples, cafes, and quiet houses, a realization slowly formed. For months, I had asked the wrong question. I kept asking, do auspicious dates really work? But nobody in Thailand seemed obsessed with proving that. Instead, they were asking a different question. How do we honor an important beginning? That difference changed everything. A wedding, a business, a home, a major life decision. These moments matter. And cultures everywhere create rituals around them. In Thailand, one of those rituals is choosing an auspicious day. Not because success is guaranteed, not because failure disappears, but because the act itself encourages reflection, preparation, community, respect, and hope. Perhaps that was the true secret, not controlling fate, but approaching the future with intention. As the city settled into sleep around me, I felt my understanding growing deeper. Yet one final piece of the puzzle remained, because there was still something I hadn't fully understood. Something that connected astrology, family, Buddhism, and modern Thai life in a surprisingly beautiful way. And that final lesson would arrive from the person I least expected, an 83-year-old monk living quietly near the mountains. Chapter 4. The Monk Who Spoke About Time. Several weeks after the coffee shop opened, life returned to its familiar rhythm. The rainy season slowly faded. Blue skies appeared more often. The mornings became brighter, the evenings cooler, and yet the question of auspicious dates continued to follow me. Not because I was confused anymore. In many ways, I already understood much more than when I first arrived in Thailand. I understood that people were not simply searching for luck. I understood that families used auspicious dates to mark important beginnings. I understood that business owners often viewed them as symbols of hope and preparation. But one question still lingered quietly in my mind. Why had this tradition survived in modern Thailand? After all, Thailand was not isolated from the world. The country had modern cities, modern businesses, modern technology. People used smartphones, managed international companies, worked in finance, studied science, built software. Yet, many still checked auspicious dates. Why? One morning, Niran offered a possible answer. Would you like to meet someone? Who? A monk. That sounded promising. The temple near the mountain. The temple sat on a hillside outside Chiang Mai. The road climbed gently through forests filled with bamboo and teak trees. Birdsong echoed through the valley. Sunlight filtered through the leaves. The further we traveled, the quieter everything became. Eventually, we reached the temple. It was smaller than I expected. No crowds, no tour buses, no souvenir shops, just peaceful buildings surrounded by nature. The sound of wind moved softly through the trees. Somewhere nearby, water trickled down a small stream. The entire place seemed wrapped in stillness. Niran led me to a shaded wooden pavilion. There sat an elderly monk, thin, gentle, perhaps 80 years old, maybe older. His eyes carried the calm confidence of someone who had spent decades observing life. Niran introduced us. The monk smiled warmly. Then he invited us to sit. For several minutes, nobody spoke. At first, the silence felt unusual. Then it became comfortable. The forest filled the space between us. Leaves rustled. Birds called. Wind whispered through bamboo. Finally, the monk looked at me. You have questions. I laughed. Many. Good. The question. I decided to ask directly. Why do so many Thai people still believe in auspicious dates? The monk smiled. Interestingly, he didn't answer immediately. Instead, he asked, do you celebrate birthdays? Of course. Why? I opened my mouth, then paused. The question seemed simple, yet I wasn't sure. To remember the day, the monk nodded. And New Year's Day? To mark a new year. And anniversaries? To remember important events. The monk smiled again. Then you also give meaning to time. The answer landed softly, yet powerfully. I had never considered it that way. The monk continued. Every culture chooses certain moments and says, this matters. The breeze carried the scent of wet earth through the pavilion. The forest remained quiet around us. Humans do not live by clocks alone. The monk pointed toward the mountains. We live by meaning. For a moment, nobody spoke. The simplicity of the idea stayed with me. Perhaps auspicious dates were not so strange after all. Every society marks special moments. Some with holidays, some with festivals, some with ceremonies, some with anniversaries. Thailand simply had its own way. The difference between fate and attention. After a while, I asked another question. Do you believe a date can change someone's destiny? The monk chuckled softly, a warm laugh. The kind of laugh that comes from hearing the same question many times. Then he shook his head. No date can make a lazy person successful. I smiled. I had heard similar words from the astrologer. The monk continued. No date can force kindness. No date can create wisdom. No date can replace effort. The forest seemed to grow even quieter. Then he added something I would never forget. But a date can change attention. Attention? Yes. He nodded slowly. When people believe a moment is important, they become more careful. That idea felt profound. Auspicious dates might not magically change outcomes, but they could influence behavior. They could make people more thoughtful, more mindful, more present. A couple entering marriage may reflect more deeply. A business owner may prepare more carefully. A family may come together more intentionally. The date itself is not doing the work. The people are, but the chosen date encourages them to bring their best selves to the beginning. The monk smiled. Sometimes that is enough. Watching the temple clock. Later that afternoon, I wandered through the temple grounds alone. A simple clock hung near one of the buildings. Its hands moved slowly, quietly, almost unnoticed. I found myself staring at it, thinking. Every second looked identical. Every minute, every hour. Yet, humans constantly assign meaning to certain moments. A wedding day, a birthday, a graduation, the birth of a child, the opening of a business, the beginning of a new chapter. Perhaps meaning is one of the things that transforms time into memory. Without meaning, days blur together. With meaning, certain days remain with us forever. Suddenly, auspicious dates felt less like a superstition and more like a language, a cultural way of saying, this moment matters. Remember it. Treat it carefully. The story of the rice farmer. Before we left, the monk shared one final story. A simple story, the kind that sounds small at first, but stays with you for years. When I was young, he said, I knew a rice farmer. The afternoon sun glowed softly beyond the trees. Birds moved between branches overhead. The monk continued. The farmer always chose planting days carefully. Because he believed they were lucky? I asked. The monk smiled. Partly. Then he shook his head. But there was another reason. What was it? He used those days to gather everyone. The monk looked toward the forest. Family, neighbors, friends, everyone came. The farmer prepared food. People worked together. They laughed, shared stories, helped each other. The chosen day became a community event. The planting itself mattered, but so did the gathering, so did the relationships, so did the feeling that everyone was beginning something together. The monk looked back at me. Sometimes traditions survive because they do more than people realize. I thought about Pim's coffee shop, Dao's wedding, the astrologer, Grandma Sa. Every example shared something in common. The tradition created connection, family connection, community connection, emotional connection. Perhaps that was one reason it remained alive. A modern country with ancient roots. On the drive back to Chiang Mai, I watched the countryside pass by. Rice fields shimmered in the afternoon sunlight. Water buffalo stood quietly near ponds. Motorcycles traveled alongside modern highways. Ancient temples appeared beside convenience stores. The contrast fascinated me. Thailand seemed comfortable holding both worlds at once. The modern and the traditional. The future and the past. Technology and ritual. Neither side completely replacing the other. Perhaps that balance was one of the country's greatest strengths. People could use banking apps and still respect ancestral traditions. They could operate international businesses and still consult family elders. They could embrace modern life without abandoning cultural memory. As a foreigner, I found that beautiful, because so often the world assumes progress requires forgetting. Thailand seemed to suggest another possibility: progress while remembering. The real meaning. That night, I returned to the river where Niran and I had first discussed auspicious dates. The water moved quietly beneath the lights of the city. Reflections shimmered across the surface. A soft breeze carried the scent of food from nearby market stalls. Everything felt peaceful. I remembered my first reaction months ago. The skepticism, the confusion, the assumption that people were simply trying to predict the future. Now I saw something very different. Most of the people I had met weren't trying to control destiny. They understood that life remained uncertain. Businesses could succeed or fail. Marriages could face challenges. Plans could change. Nobody truly knew the future. The tradition wasn't about certainty. It was about entering uncertainty with care, with respect, with hope, and perhaps that was far wiser than I had first imagined. As the river flowed silently through the sleeping city, I realized I was approaching the final piece of understanding. One last lesson remained. A lesson that would arrive during a celebration unlike anything I had experienced before. A celebration where hundreds of people gathered, not because they believed a date guaranteed success, but because they understood the extraordinary power of beginning together. Chapter 5. The day that brought everyone together. A few months passed. The rainy season ended. Cool season arrived in northern Thailand. The mornings felt crisp. The skies turned a brilliant shade of blue. The mountains surrounding Chiang Mai appeared clearer than ever. And by then, something inside me had changed. When I first arrived in Thailand, I viewed auspicious dates through the lens of belief. I kept asking whether they were true, whether they worked, whether they could influence fate. Now I found myself asking a different question. What purpose do they serve? And the answer was slowly becoming clearer. Then, one final experience brought everything together. The new family store. One afternoon, Niran invited me to attend the opening of a family-owned grocery store in a small village outside the city. The family has saved money for years. The building wasn't large. It wasn't luxurious. But it represented something important. A dream. A goal achieved. A new chapter. As we drove through the countryside, golden rice fields stretched toward the horizon. Farmers worked beneath the warm sunlight. Birds glided above irrigation canals. The landscape felt peaceful, timeless. When we arrived, dozens of people were already gathered. Grandparents, children, neighbors, friends. Everyone seemed excited. Food tables lined one side of the property. Fresh fruit, noodles, sticky rice, traditional desserts. The smell filled the air. Laughter echoed across the yard. It felt less like a business opening and more like a family celebration. Perhaps it was both. More than a lucky day. The chosen opening time was still an hour away, yet nobody appeared impatient. People chatted beneath shaded trees. Children played games. Older relatives shared stories. Everyone seemed happy simply being there. I found myself standing beside the store owner's father, a quiet man in his 70s. His hands showed decades of hard work. Years spent farming, building, providing. I asked him a question. Why was today chosen? He smiled. A good day. There it was again. The familiar answer. But this time, before I could ask another question, he continued. You know, when I was young, I thought lucky dates were only about luck. That surprised me. Even he had once thought that. The old man looked around at the crowd. Then he pointed gently. What do you see? I followed his gaze. Children laughing, neighbors talking, relatives helping serve food, friends carrying supplies, people taking photographs, people smiling, people connecting. The old man nodded. That is why the day matters. Suddenly, I understood. The date had done something important. It had created a moment, a shared moment, one that brought people together. Without that special day, everyone might simply continue with daily life. Busy, distracted, separated. Instead, they gathered, celebrated, supported one another, and perhaps that support mattered far more than luck. A conversation with the young owner. Later that afternoon, I met the store's owner. His name was Art. He was in his early 30s. Energetic, ambitious, practical. Exactly the kind of person I expected to dismiss old traditions. Yet he had carefully selected an auspicious opening date. I asked him why. His answer surprised me. I don't know if the date changes the future. He laughed. Nobody knows that. Then he looked around at the crowd. But today changes me. That sentence stayed with me. Today changes me. Not fate, not destiny. Him, he explained further. For months, I prepared for this. I worried. I stressed. I worked every day. He smiled. But when the day arrived, everyone came. Family members, old friends, neighbors, people who had known him since childhood, people who wanted him to succeed. They remind me I am not building this alone. For a moment, I looked around the gathering again, and I realized something. Every important beginning carries uncertainty. A marriage, a business, a move, a new home, a new chapter in life. Nobody can guarantee success. But support makes uncertainty easier to face. Perhaps auspicious dates help create that support. The three things I learned. As sunset approached, golden light spread across the fields. The celebration gradually slowed. People lingered. Nobody seemed eager to leave. The evening felt warm, comfortable, reflective. I sat beneath a tree and thought about everything I had learned during my months in Thailand. 3 discoveries stood out. First discovery: auspicious dates are about intention. Before Thailand, I assumed people selected lucky dates because they believed success would automatically follow. Now I understood something deeper. Choosing an auspicious date often encourages people to pause, to reflect, to prepare, to think carefully before taking an important step. The date becomes a reminder: this matters. Do not rush. Second discovery: auspicious dates bring people together. Whether it was Dao's wedding, Pim's coffee shop, or Art's grocery store, the chosen date created a gathering point. Families organized around it. Friends traveled for it. Communities participated in it. The date became a reason to connect, and connection is often one of the most powerful forms of support. Third discovery: auspicious dates help create meaning. Every culture finds ways to make certain moments memorable. In Thailand, auspicious dates help transform ordinary calendar days into meaningful milestones. Not because the numbers themselves possess magical powers, but because people collectively decide this day matters, and that decision changes how they experience it. The evening reflection. That night, I returned home beneath a sky filled with stars. The countryside roads were quiet. Crickets sang from the fields. The cool season air felt refreshing after months of rain. As the car moved through the darkness, I thought back to my first weeks in Thailand. Back then, I saw auspicious dates as something irrational, something old-fashioned, something difficult to understand. Now I saw them differently, not as predictions, not as guarantees, but as cultural tools, ways of marking important beginnings, ways of encouraging reflection, ways of bringing people together, ways of honoring hope. And perhaps hope deserves honoring. After all, every major step in life contains uncertainty. No calendar can eliminate that. No tradition can erase risk. No ceremony can guarantee success. But traditions can help people approach uncertainty with courage, with community, with mindfulness. And maybe that is enough. A quiet lesson from Thailand. A few days later, I sat alone beside the Ping River once again. The same river where Niran and I had shared our first conversation about auspicious date. The water flowed quietly beneath the evening sky. Lights reflected across the surface. A gentle breeze drifted through the trees. Everything felt calm. The city slowly prepared for sleep. I remembered what the monk had said. Humans do not live by clocks alone. We live by meaning. Those words now made perfect sense. A calendar is more than numbers. Certain days become woven into our lives. The day we meet someone, the day we marry, the day we begin a dream, the day we open a door to a new future. Perhaps that is why so many Thai people continue checking auspicious dates. Not because they believe a single day controls destiny, but because they understand something many of us forget: beginnings matter. The way we enter a new chapter matters. The attention we give it matters. The people who stand beside us matter. And when all those things come together, a simple date becomes something much more. It becomes a memory, a promise, a moment that will be remembered long after the calendar page has turned. As the river continued its quiet journey through the night, I watched the reflections dance upon the water. The city lights shimmered softly. Temple bells echoed faintly in the distance. And I realized that Thailand had once again changed the way I saw the world. I arrived believing people were searching for lucky days. I left understanding they were often searching for something far more meaningful, a thoughtful beginning, a shared hope, and a beautiful reminder that some moments in life deserve to be entered slowly, carefully, and together. Good night. The end. Thailand still holds countless stories waiting to be discovered. If you would like to continue this journey together, I hope to see you again in the next story from Thailand through eyes. And if there is somewhere in Thailand you wish to visit through story, leave your suggestion below. Perhaps our next journey will begin there. Bye.